We have zero solution to asteroid impacts. We have zero solution to things that have wiped out. We know they killed off the dinosaurs.
Right.
We know that. We know it. We're for 100%. They fucking find the crater in the Yucatan. They find craters all over the place.
Yellowstone, that famous national park with its geysers and hot springs, is making headlines for all the wrong reasons lately. It all started with a little shake in the evening, just your run-of-the-mill earthquake, or so everyone thought. But then it kept going and going. For days, the ground wouldn't stop trembling. Turns out it wasn't just a few shakes, it was hundreds of them, one after the other, rocking Yellowstone like never before. Now, here's where it gets really concerning. Scientists are saying these earthquakes might not be just random rumblings. They could be a sign of something much scarier, a supervolcanic eruption. Yep, you heard that right. Yellowstone sits atop a massive volcanic hotspot, and every few 100,000 years it blows its top in a catastrophic event that could wipe out entire continents. So people are understandably freaking out. In a recent podcast, Joe Rogan and Billy Carson reveal how the residents are on alert. Scientists are scrambling to figure out what's next, and the rest of us are watching closely. It's a tense situation to say the least. The fear of this supervolcano waking up and wreaking havoc is very real right now. Recently, Joe had the chance to sit down with Billy Carson, who has been studying the Yellowstone Supervolcano for years. The Yellowstone Supervolcano. Yellowstone, once admired for its serene beauty and natural wonders, now holds a more ominous reputation. Back in 1870, Lieutenant Gustavus Duan climbed Mount Wishburne during an expedition in Wyoming Territory. From there, he gazed southward and noticed something peculiar. The Rocky Mountains seemed strangely absent, replaced by a vast forest basin encircled by distant hills. His conclusion? The basin was the remnant of an ancient volcano. Turns out Lieutenant Duan was spot on. Yellowstone is indeed a volcano. And not just any volcano, it's one of the largest and most renowned on Earth. However, where he missed the mark was in assuming it was extinct. Quite the opposite. Yellowstone's volcano is very much alive and kicking. Now, let's talk about supervolcanoes. They're not your average volcanic eruptions. These are in leagues of their own, characterized by exceptionally massive explosions. While there isn't a universally agreed upon definition, scientists generally classify an eruption as supervolcanic if it spews out more than 240 cubic miles of ash and pumice in a single event. To put that in perspective, it's over 50 times the volume of the devastating Krakatoa eruption of 1883, which tragically claimed tens of thousands of lives. Yellowstone Supervolcano is a prime example of this potential cataclysm. It's a sleeping giant capable of unleashing immeasurable destruction. That's why scientists and authorities keep a close watch, knowing that an eruption here could have global consequences. The story of Yellowstone isn't just about its natural beauty anymore. It's a sobering reminder of nature's awesome power and the need for constant vigilance. Supervolcanoes are a whole different beast compared to regular volcanoes. When a volcano erupts, it can devastate the surrounding area for miles with its lava flows and ash clouds. But a supervolcano goes way beyond that and can flatten mountains that were shaped by regular volcanoes. These colossal eruptions don't just affect local ecosystems, they can alter the global climate and threaten the existence of entire species. While humans have never witnessed a supervolcano eruption firsthand, scientists have pieced together how these mega explosions unfold. It starts deep within the Earth, where intense heat and pressure create a massive chamber filled with a volatile mix of magma, semi-solid rock, and gases like carbon dioxide and water vapor. Over thousands of years, this chamber builds up beneath the surface, causing the ground above to gradually rise by inches. Then, similar to a pressure cooker reaching its limit, cracks begin to form around the edges of the chamber. When the pressure is finally released, it triggers a cataclysmic chain reaction. The dissolved gases in the magma chamber explode outward all at once, akin to popping open a shaken soda bottle. This process is not just dramatic, it's a reminder of the immense power our planet holds beneath its surface. Understanding these mechanisms is crucial for preparing and mitigating the potential impacts of such rare but catastrophic events. Over the span of 18 million years, the Yellowstone hotspot has generated numerous volcanic eruptions, forming the iconic Yellowstone caldera. The aftermath of these eruptions can be seen in the eerie landscapes of the Snake River Plain, where vast lava flows have left behind ghostly calderas stretching across southern Idaho, Oregon, and Nevada. This hotspot isn't stationary either, it's steadily pushing southward due to the movement of the tectonic plate above it. Now, about those earthquakes. If you've ever been to Yellowstone, chances are you've experienced a minor earthquake, even if you didn't notice it. Each year, the region experiences between 1,000 and 3,000 earthquakes on average. Most are too small to be felt, but some, like the notable 1959 quake, make their presence known. Yellowstone sits in the Intermountain Seismic Belt, a zone of frequent seismic activity that spans states from Montana to Arizona. Yellowstone's earthquakes. Earthquakes play a crucial role in the maintenance of Yellowstone's hydrothermal features like geysers and hot springs. These natural wonders rely on a delicate balance of hot water flowing through tiny fissures and conduits in the Earth's crust. Without periodic earthquakes, mineral deposits could gradually seal off these pathways, potentially quieting the geothermal activity over time. In Yellowstone, most earthquakes go unnoticed by humans unless they exceed a magnitude of 3.0. Structural damage typically starts becoming a concern at magnitude 4.0 or higher, while an earthquake of magnitude 6.5 or above can cause significant ground rupture.
I wish you could see what I'm seeing, people! I wish you could be here with me! Oh, baby!
Although rare, Yellowstone does experience earthquakes above magnitude 6. One of the most infamous tremors occurred on August 17, 1959, near Hebgen Lake in southwest Montana. This 7.5 magnitude earthquake caused widespread devastation, including 18 miles of surface faulting, and was felt across an area spanning 600,000 square miles. Tragically, it struck during peak tourist season, resulting in significant damage to local infrastructure and claiming several lives. Hebgen Lake itself is a significant reservoir formed by the Hebgen Dam, completed in 1914. To the west lies the picturesque Madison River Canyon, renowned for its blue ribbon fly fishing waters. Even today, aftershocks from the 1959 earthquake can still be felt, serving as a reminder of the seismic activity that shapes Yellowstone's landscape and impacts its visitors and residents alike. The events leading up to and following the 1959 earthquake near Hebgen Lake were nothing short of harrowing. Before the quake struck, the Madison River flowed peacefully through a picturesque canyon in the Madison Range, surrounded by dense forests and rocky slopes. At the base of this canyon lay Rock Creek Campground, a popular spot for tourists on their way to Yellowstone National Park. When the earthquake hit, it lasted only moments but left a lasting impact. A massive fault line slipped, causing a vertical 20-foot wall of earth to shift abruptly. Within seconds, a large chunk of rock and debris dislodged from the canyon's north-facing slope, hurtling down into the valley. This landslide quickly formed a natural dam downstream, blocking the Madison River's flow and creating what is now known as Earthquake Lake. The dam, already weakened by the quake, faced further challenges. When large waves breached its structure, residents of nearby Ennis were forced to evacuate amidst fears of the dam's potential collapse. As night fell, chaos and panic gripped the area. Families fled in darkness, scrambling for higher ground as the rising waters of the newly formed lake threatened to engulf their campsites and vehicles. Tragically, some were trapped, their cries for help echoing through the night. By dawn, the true extent of the disaster became apparent. The final toll included 28 lives lost, with 19 more believed to be buried under the avalanche of debris. It was a long and terrifying ordeal, with days passing before the full scope of the tragedy could be comprehended and the fate of those involved determined. The story of Earthquake Lake serves as a stark reminder of the power of nature and the unpredictability of life in volcanic and seismic zones like Yellowstone. The aftermath of the 1959 earthquake near Hebgen Lake brought about significant changes throughout Yellowstone National Park and the surrounding areas. Despite the devastation, swift efforts by officials helped evacuate hundreds to safety at Refuge Point, an elevated area accessible after the quake. Roads and bridges damaged by the earthquake were quickly repaired by site authorities. with much of the infrastructure reopened within days. The dam, critically damaged, was also repaired and managed to hold, averting further catastrophe. In Yellowstone itself, the seismic activity triggered notable changes in its famous thermal features. Old Faithful Geyser, renowned for its predictable eruptions, saw its interval between eruptions extend from an average of 65 minutes before the quake to 74 minutes within a few years afterward. Sapphire Pool and Biscuit Basin, previously quiet, suddenly erupted to heights exceeding 200 feet shortly after the earthquake, altering the landscape dramatically by destroying its biscuit-like formations. Perhaps most astonishing was the awakening of Steamboat Geyser in Norris Geyser Basin. Dormant for over 50 years, Steamboat erupted in 1961, less than 3 years after the 1959 earthquake, showcasing the profound impact of seismic events on Yellowstone's geothermal features. Today, reminders of the earthquake can still be seen around Earthquake Lake, where the bare slopes and submerged trees serve as a poignant memorial to the altered landscape. Yellowstone continues to experience seismic activity, with significant earthquakes like the magnitude 4.8 event in 2014 near Norris Geyser Basin, reminding us of the park's dynamic and ever-changing nature. Aftermath of past eruptions. Deep within Yellowstone National Park lies a vast and intricate geological monitoring system, largely unseen by the casual tourist. Operated by seismologists from the University of Utah, this network includes 26 seismograph stations, strategically placed throughout the park. These stations constantly monitor seismic activity, providing crucial data on the subsurface geology and volcanic processes beneath Yellowstone. One common phenomenon tackled by these instruments is earthquake swarms. These swarms consist of numerous small earthquakes clustered in a specific area over a short period, sometimes more than 100 quakes in a single day. For instance, between Old Faithful and West Yellowstone alone, approximately 2,000 earthquakes were recorded in 2010. These swarms, while unsettling, offer scientists valuable insights into the dynamics of Yellowstone's volcanic system. Yellowstone is no stranger to cataclysmic eruptions. In fact, the last 3 super eruptions in Earth's history occurred right here. The most recent super eruption happened about 640,000 years ago, dwarfing even the devastating Mount St. Helens eruption of 1980. Which claimed 57 lives in Washington state. The Yellowstone eruption sent an ash plume soaring to an astonishing altitude of approximately 100,000 feet, blanketing the western United States and reaching as far as the Gulf of Mexico with a layer of volcanic debris.
The Madison River continued to flow without incident, but this was a massive earthquake. We are actually on the 60th anniversary. We are here at the site.
Yellowstone's volcanic history is a tale of unimaginable power and global impact. When supervolcanoes like Yellowstone erupt, they unleash pyroclastic flows, dense toxic mixtures of sludge, rock, and superheated gas, reaching temperatures up to 1,470 degrees Fahrenheit. These deadly clouds sweep across the landscape, bonding like asphalt as they cool, filling valleys and altering the terrain forever. And this description only scratches the surface of Yellowstone's tumultuous past. The most recent super eruption here occurred about 640,000 years ago, but even more powerful eruptions took place earlier. One eruption 2.1 million years ago created a crater comparable to the size of Rhode Island. Another, about 1.3 million years ago, was slightly smaller but equally devastating. Each of these cataclysmic events sent gases into the stratosphere, where they combined with water vapor to form a thin haze of sulfate aerosols. This haze potentially triggered a volcanic winter by reducing sunlight, impacting global climates. Scientists even speculate that humanity's genetic history bears scars from such events, like the Toba eruption in Indonesia around 74,000 years ago, which may have caused a severe pollution bottleneck. Despite their violent history, Yellowstone supervolcanoes have largely healed over time. Erosion, glaciers, and smaller eruptions, the most recent being 70,000 years ago, have gradually filled the Yellowstone caldera with lava flows and ash. Today, the scars of these ancient cataclysms are hidden beneath tranquil woodlands, visible only to those with a keen eye like Lieutenant D, who first recognized Yellowstone's volcanic nature over a century ago. Yellowstone's geological and ecological profile is complex, shaped by its explosive past and ongoing volcanic activity. The Yellowstone caldera, despite its tumultuous history, now harbors nutrient-rich soils, ideal for lodgepole pine trees, crucial for sustaining the park's ecosystem. Grizzlies and black bears depend on the nuts produced by white bark pines, highlighting the interconnectedness of flora and fauna in this dynamic environment. Hydrothermal features like geysers and mud volcanoes and hot springs are pervasive throughout Yellowstone, driven by the park's underlying volcanic heat. These features include half of the world's geysers constantly change in temperature and behavior, with new ones occasionally emerging in forested areas, emitting steam clouds visible even from the air. The extreme heat and vapors from these hydrothermal features can pose risks, evidenced by incidents where bison have been killed on the spot. Despite its volcanic origins, Yellowstone remained largely unstudied for decades following initial federal surveys in the late 1800s. It wasn't until the late 1950s that interest was renewed. Living, breathing caldera. In the mid-1960s, researchers made significant discoveries in Yellowstone's volcanic history. They determined 3 distinct welded tuff layers resulted from separate eruptions, each leaving behind massive calderas. The most recent eruption completely obscured the remnants of its predecessors, highlighting the ongoing geological activity shaping the park. In 1973, while working on Pele Island in Yellowstone Lake's south arm, they noticed half-buried and dying trees along the beach, a stark contrast to his previous surveys in 1956, when the area was undisturbed. Even the boat dock they had used then was submerged, indicating significant changes in the lake's water levels. Further investigations revealed that Hayden Valley, situated atop the caldera north of the lake, had risen approximately 30 inches over the intervening decades. Strangely, the water level at the lake's base remained unchanged, suggesting that the northern part of the lake had risen, potentially spilling water into the southern part. These observations underscored the dynamic and active nature of Yellowstone's volcanic system. These findings were published in 1979, describing Yellowstone as a living, breathing caldera in interviews. Through advanced seismic analysis, scientists have gradually revealed the size and potential of Yellowstone's underground volcanic system. By studying how earthquake-generated sound waves propagate through different densities of rock beneath the surface, researchers have discerned the presence of a massive plume of hot rock rising from Earth's upper mantle. This plume tilted northwest by 60 degrees and potentially extending about 400 miles below the surface, feeds into Yellowstone's magma chamber. The movement of the ground itself serves as a dynamic indicator of the volcanic processes at play. As the plume delivers heat to the magma chamber, causing it to expand, small earthquakes release hydrothermal fluids to the surface, reducing pressure inside the chamber. This cyclical process results in the ground periodically rising and falling. After the earthquake swarm in 1985, Yellowstone sank 8 inches over the following decade. Subsequently, it began to rise again, and since 2004, portions of the caldera have surged upward at an astonishing rate of nearly 3 inches per year, the fastest uplift observed since detailed monitoring began in the 1970s. Even amid these natural movements, Yellowstone continues to stir up public fascination. An 11-day earthquake swarm in late 2008 sparked a flurry of apocalyptic rumors online, highlighting the ongoing public interest and concern surrounding Yellowstone's seismic and volcanic activity. The Hunga volcano near Tonga erupted in January 2022, creating an enormous spectacle. After weeks of ash emissions, the underwater volcano exploded, sending 2.3 cubic miles of molten rock into the air, and turning 146 teragrams of water into vapor, enough to fill 58,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools. The eruption produced a massive plume that reached 36 miles high, almost touching the edge of space, and was accompanied by a spectacular display of volcanic lighting. This phenomenon, known since ancient times and observed during the Mount Vesuvius eruption in 79 AD, featured a huge ring of electrical discharges spanning 280 kilometers across the eruption site. The Hunga volcano eruption revealed an unusual occurrence: gravity waves caused by the rapid ascent of hot volcanic gases, ash, and vaporized water. gravity waves form when there is a density difference between air and water layers, similar to separating oil from water. In this scenario, the volcano plume rose above the usual atmospheric layer, spreading out horizontally and creating ripple-like patterns instead of falling directly downward. The plume carried particles of tephra, volcanic ash, and evaporated seawater, which rode those gravity waves. As the water vapor moved up into the atmosphere and cooled quickly, it formed ice crystals and graupel, soft hail pellets. The collisions of these particles generated static electricity, akin to what happens in regular thunderstorms, but intensified by the presence of volcanic ash. This combination of ice and volcanic ash created distinct patterns of electrical charge, humorously described by meteorologist Brunning as Dippin' Dots of electrical charge. These waves are particularly effective in generating lightning due to their sharp leading edge. This edge can push smaller particles like ash and ice crystals upward, while denser particles like graupel and tephra are pushed downward. Volcanic ash poses significant risks to aviation and nearby communities. The uncertainty surrounding when a Yellowstone volcano might erupt again is a common concern among tourists and scientists alike. While Yellowstone's current dormant period has lasted over 70,000 years, the possibility of a catastrophic caldera-forming eruption remains uncertain. It could happen in our lifetimes or tens of thousands of years from now. Yellowstone will inevitably reawaken at some point, potentially unleashing eruptions that could impact global climate and ecosystems. The dangers of the Yellowstone Supervolcano.
History of Yellowstone goes back to the formation of the North American continent.
For nearly a century after Yellowstone National Park was established,
the Yellowstone Supervolcano poses numerous dangers due to its immense size and potential for catastrophic eruptions. Situated beneath Yellowstone National Park, this colossal caldera has the capacity to produce eruptions that dwarf any seen in recorded history. The most recent super eruption, approximately 640,000 years ago, expelled enough volcanic material to blanket the western United States in ash, impacting climates globally. The immediate effects of such an eruption would be devastating, with pyroclastic flows, dense fast-moving currents of hot gas and volcanic matter, scorching vast areas around the caldera. These flows, capable of obliterating everything in their path, would lead to unprecedented loss of life and destruction of infrastructure. The dangers extend far beyond the initial blast zone. A supervolcanic eruption would release vast quantities of ash into the atmosphere, which could spread across continents, disrupting air travel and damaging machinery. The ash fall would contaminate water supplies, destroy crops, and cause respiratory problems for humans and animals alike. The thick ash clouds could also block sunlight, leading to a significant drop in global temperatures, a phenomenon known as volcanic winter. This dramatic climate shift could last for years, severely impacting agriculture and leading to food shortages worldwide. The reduced temperatures and altered weather patterns would have cascading effects on ecosystems, potentially driving many species to extinction. The release of volcanic gases, particularly sulfur dioxide, would contribute to acid rain, further damaging crops, forests, and water bodies. The long-term environmental impact of a Yellowstone eruption would be profound, altering landscapes and ecosystems for centuries. The economic cost would be staggering, with damage to infrastructure, healthcare, agriculture, and global trade running into trillions of dollars. The human toll in terms of lives lost, displaced populations, and long-term health issues would be incalculable. While monitoring systems provide some early warning capabilities, the scale and unpredictability of a supervolcanic eruption mean that comprehensive preparedness and response plans are essential to mitigate the potential devastation.
And the thing is, like, how much leeway do employees have? Because it's clearly not being done by AI.
Despite the controversies and criticisms, its impact on public discourse, Joe Rogan stands firm in the face of his controversial opinions.
You know, and there's a lot of angry, jealous comedians, unfortunately. And there's a lot of comedians that look at other people's success and they feel bad. So they think that you're doing something bad because they feel bad, because they don't like the way it makes them feel when someone's killing it. Like, a lot of comedians are narcissists, and a lot of them are very self-centered and egomaniac. And so they think that when you're doing something well or something's going well for you, that somehow or another it takes something away from them.
His broad reach has also sparked controversy, as he has been criticized for giving a platform to conspiracy theories and controversial figures.
This stuff is very subjective. So a lot of these kids that are working in these tech companies, they're coming straight from universities and they're super woke. And they think that people like DeStefano or people like you or me are a real problem.
He supports drug policy reform, particularly the legalization of cannabis and psychedelics, drawing on his own experiences and the potential mental health benefits. Rogan's role in the ongoing conversation about media, free speech, and the exchange of ideas remains pivotal as he continues to evolve and influence.
I think what they want is intellectual property. They want to steal data, and they want to, like, if they have access to your computer and say, what if you're working on some fucking weapon system? Or what if you're working on some communication system, and they have access to your computer, they can steal that data from your computer because they have access to it because you're using TikTok. Disturbing things are saying that they have access to computers that aren't even being used for TikTok. They had an engineer, software engineer, back-engineered TikTok and said it was the most, in terms of like invasion of privacy, it was the most egregious example that they'd ever found. The terms of service is nuts. Just reading that any company that would try to sell you on social media. I mean, it's one thing to like say, oh, we're going to target ads in your direction. We're kind of used to that. Like, whatever. Like with Google and shit. Like, I don't mind if they send ads my way. But what they're doing is nuts. They have access to your audio. That means they have access to your fucking microphone. It's just impossible to change people's ways. They have to want to change. They have to be motivated. They have to. It's so hard to change people. It's like if you've ever had a friend that's been into drugs and it's been all fucked up and you can't get them to quit, or an alcoholic. It is almost impossible to talk someone into changing. They have to have some motivation that's internal. Yeah. And that's the same thing with eating good. The best example you could set is by living your life in a healthy way. That's one of the best things about the internet. You get to see all these people that are doing things in a healthy way and doing things that are exciting and inspirational, and then it makes you want to do stuff that's good. It makes you want to take care of your body, and makes you really want to concentrate on your mind and meditate and just really get everything in order. John Danaher wrote some really fascinating piece on his Instagram about routine, about how important it is if you're a great athlete. You say, you find me a great athlete, I'll find you someone whose life is governed by routine. And that this is the way to check progress, and this is the way to constantly be moving towards your goal. And I remember reading that, and I said to myself, this is something that I've always known, but never verbalized. I've never said it, but it's something that I've always known. Try to find a thing that you really enjoy. Try to find a thing that you're passionate about. Like an activity. Yes. For me, early on, it was drawing. It was illustrations. It was comic books. I wanted to be a comic book illustrator. And then it went from comic book drawing and illustrations to martial arts. So, but it was just another thing that I was very, very passionate about. And that was my vehicle out of my dilemma. That was my vehicle out of my own anxiety and trauma and my own issues and insecurities. And find something. Find a thing that you genuinely enjoy, because getting good at things you genuinely enjoy is extremely beneficial for young people, because it lets you know that, like, everybody thinks they're a loser. Every young person thinks they're a loser. At least a young person in the situation I was at. Like, I didn't know I wasn't a loser until I started winning, until I started doing martial arts. Martial arts taught me that, like, I could get better at stuff, that I wasn't really a loser. I just was someone who was, like, in a fucked up situation. But you could channel all that energy that you have as a young person into something and get better at it. And then all of a sudden people admired me. I was like, this is crazy. So I went from being someone who was incredibly insecure and basically a failure to someone who was really successful at this one thing that was very dangerous, that other people were scared of. And that gave me immense confidence and also a real understanding of the direct correlation between hard work and success. And also an understanding that you can't listen to people. Because even my parents didn't want me to do martial arts. They didn't want me to fight. They didn't want me to do stand-up. There's like, you have to understand like who you are, and then in the face of other people's either criticism or, you know, lack of faith in your ability to succeed, you push through, and there's great benefit in that. And then you realize that you can kind of apply that to other things in life. You can apply that to critics. You can apply that to social media commentators. You can apply that to a lot of things. Just give yourself something, an arduous, difficult task where you're challenged mentally and challenged physically. One of the great things about being challenged physically is it's also mental. The people that don't understand that have never really been challenged physically. People that think that physical challenges are just physical. It's just brute grunt work. It's not. It's emotional intelligence. It's understanding your desire to quit and, you know, conquering your inner bitch. All that stuff it's mental. It's playing out inside your head. And there's a mental strength that you acquire from that you can apply to intellectual pursuits. And the people that don't think that are the people that haven't attempted them. And there's an arrogance to people that only pursue intellectual exercises, only pursue intellectual things, and don't pursue anything physical. That the physical stuff is base, it's grunt work, it's primal, it's not necessary. I don't think that's accurate. I don't think that I mean, obviously there's people like Stephen Hawking who have no opportunity to do anything physical, right? His physical dilemma is was keeping his heart beating. But for most people, I think you can really benefit from physical struggle, and you benefit from it in a mental way. And I think that is overlooked. That's unfortunately overlooked by academics and intellectuals who they make excuses for why they're fat and lazy or scrawny. Did you see that lady on 60 Minutes? They interviewed her. She's some new woman who works in the White House. And they asked her about obesity. She said the #1 cause of obesity is genetics, and it doesn't matter what you do. Like you could be a person who has a perfect diet and exercises and sleeps right, and you're still obese. Mm-hmm. And the health experts went fucking nuts. Like that's not what the data shows. The data shows that most people who are obese have obese parents, and they come from an obese family, but they're all doing the wrong thing. There's not like a person in that family that's eating grass-fed steak and running marathons and lifting weights and getting up at 6 in the morning and getting in a cold plunge and doing all these different things, but it's still fat as fuck.
Yeah.
And they're watching the calories in and calories out, and they're burning, 1,000 calories a day in exercise, and they're still fat as fuck. That's not real. Like to say that and to say it on 60 Minutes, there's this weird thing going on where people want to say it's not your fault. And it isn't your fault. I mean, if you believe in determinism, if you believe in the impact of the people around you and the environment that you're in, which is most certainly real, the impact of your parents, the impact of modeling, you're modeling after other people's bad decision-making, that's all real. That's 100% real. But to say that all obesity is just genetic is bonkers. That's a bonkers thing to say, and it discredits all these people that we know that were obese, that without surgery lost all that weight and looked great. Like Ethan Suplee, perfect example. There was a guy that was at one point in time like 500 plus pounds, right? Documented all of it, did it publicly because he was a fucking star. He's a famous actor, lost all the weight, now looks great, and did it through exercise and discipline, and even like was really open about the fact that he gained a lot of it back a couple times. He went from 550 to 255. He did that. Wow. He did that himself. I mean, he did it, and he documented it, and he had to go through surgery to get the skin removed so that his, he wasn't like a flying squirrel. But he did it. And to say that it's all genetic, like, no, he had the same genes. Like, this is the same guy. It's not. There was some silly article on fat acceptance the other day, and it was talking, and then they got which is fine. I accept people who drink. I accept all kinds of unhealthy choices, but don't lie to me. Just don't lie about the physical reality of what you've done to your body if you reach 400 pounds. That's not healthy. You're saying it's healthy. You're saying it's okay. No, you're just not dead yet. If you lost 200 pounds, you would feel wonderful. That would be healthier. Like, if you smoke every day and you're like, look, no cancer, smoking's healthy. No, your body is dealing with it. Your body's processing it. It won't be able to forever. That is exactly what's going on if you're morbidly obese. And for you to pretend any differently and to just go on about this fat acceptance movement and, the big, beautiful this and that, and like, no, you're obese. You've eaten too much food. If you see a fat guy, how come he doesn't get the same sort of treatment? If you see a morbidly obese man in his underwear, no one's saying he's beautiful. Because he's disgusting, and he's fat, and he's lazy, and he's addicted to food. We all know it. But if it's a woman, we're so inclined to just let her go. She's fine. You're wonderful. You're beautiful. You're amazing. Give her space. We treat them as if they're incapable of recognizing the absolute reality of their physical being. Very possible that we all become genderless. Yes, I do think that's possible. Yeah, I think that might be what is happening with microplastics are changing people's hormone system. There's a book called Countdown.
That was nice of you.
By a woman. Her name is Dr. Shanna Swan. And she came on the podcast and she explained that there's certain chemicals that are in plastics and in some fertilizers that are disrupting the human body endocrine system. And it's causing people's penises to shrink, balls to shrink, sperm counts are lowering. And one of the ways they find out about this is the size of people's taints. In male mammals, the taint is 50 to 100% larger than female mammals. So when they pick up a gerbil, that's how they can quickly tell whether or not it's a boy or a girl, is by the size of the taint. And when the introduction of phthalates, it starts with a P, P-T-H-A-L-A-T-E-S, I think it's how you spell it. You say phthalates, and phthalates are a type of chemical that disrupts the human body, and because of the use of petrochemical products, the increase of phthalates into the human body from contamination has caused people's taints to shrink, balls to shrink, dicks to shrink, sperm counts to drop, and miscarriages to go up. And they think that if you think about that, that is causing gender to just kind of compress and to become more ambiguous. And in the future, if that continues to happen, what does that mean? What do we become genderless? And then what do we do to try to keep the human race alive? Well, we may revert to genetic engineering, some sort of a medical technological intervention, so we breed from splicing genes. What's crazy about this is, although this sounds nuts, we're talking about it now, for decades, people that have been abducted by aliens have always said that aliens are performing experiments and making hybrids with human beings because their genetic material has run stale, because they're breeding, or they're rather reproducing through genetic manipulation rather than through sex, because they don't have sexual intercourse anymore.
So they need our eggs and sperm.
They need all that stuff. They need our material. But because they don't have that anymore. So that might be where all biological creatures that develop technology, and technology in our case involves a lot of plastic. The more technology, the more plastic in the bodies, the more the bodies become genderless. We found a statistic that's a little misleading, but the statistic is every week the average person consumes a credit card sized piece of plastic through microplastics. Because what Putin is trying to do is command resources and control a country that used to be a part of the Soviet Union. And what happened yesterday is just beyond explanation, right? It's just a completely fucked up situation where a sick person got a hold of a bunch of guns and decided to go kill kids. And it happens in this country every you know, every now and then. It's like, how do you stop that? No one knows how to stop that. What is the answer? Is the answer take everyone's guns? Well, they're not going to give their guns up. So you're going to have, only criminals are going to have guns. It's like, it's not going to be a good situation. And is the answer make schools these armored compounds where you have armed guards outside of every school dressed like it's a military? Boy, that's not something we want either. But what do you do to protect the children? And how many dollars is that going to cost? Like, do we even have the money to do that? Like, but the Oliver Stone perspective, when you're talking about the difference between the way we look at the rest of the world versus the way we look at our own actions, when you start bringing up Yemen is one that I've had Dave Smith on the podcast multiple times where he talks about it. Dave is very, very well read about Yemen, and it's a horrific scenario because no one cares. And it seems to me like not only no one cares. I mean, in the United States, this is not something that gets mainstream media attention on a daily basis, but the bombings are ongoing. Like we put up a chart once where they talked about the bombings that are happening in Ukraine versus the bombings that are currently happening in Yemen, and bombings that the United States is. It's wild because it's like swept under the rug, and we don't think about it. And we don't even understand why we're doing it. Like I guarantee you, if you just polled a random 1,000 people and say, what are we doing in Yemen? No one would have any idea. You'd have to have someone who really gets into this sort of esoteric, the details, like what is going on politically, what is going on economically. Someone like Dave Smith even might struggle with the full explanation of what our motivation, the military's motivation is to do this. But it's happening. And because it's not getting any attention, it's allowed to happen without scrutiny. It's allowed to happen without real mainstream criticism. If you comb, you know, the television news sources, cable, left and right, you're not going to find discussions of Yemen on a daily basis. But that is the one, if there's an area where we can't have that moral high ground, where there, you know, we say, well, what about you? Like, why do we have those? Why do we? Wouldn't it be better if the United States didn't have any of those that are unjustifiable? Where you could say, oh, the United States did this in Vietnam. Yes, we did, but it was in the 1970s. Well, that would be ideal in terms of like an example of learning and growing. And that, because the New York Times was trying to push this while the Ukraine invasion was happening. They were trying to push this thing that Ukraine was good and Russia is bad. And she was saying, well, this is one of the most corrupt countries on earth. So they said to her, like, where are you getting this information? They sent her an email, and she sent them back links to the New York Times and all these articles about how badly corrupt Ukraine was, which just makes me go, God damn. If I can't trust a fucking New York Times to get it right, like, you're supposed to be the paper of note.
What is real? If you could live in a perpetual dream, what's going on there? There's something happening. You're experiencing things. Things are happening. Whether you're lying there with your eyes closed or not, there's a bunch of shit that's going on. A bunch of experiences that your senses are taking in that are pretty fucking remarkably similar to real life.
Right.
Like, that's why it's so crazy, because it feels real. What if dreams aren't fake? What if they're just some alternative reality that you occasionally intermingle with when you're conscious, or unconscious rather? Like when you go into a dream state, maybe that's just like the shadow of something that just happened that was real. Maybe you have like these moments that seem like 8 hours to you or 5 hours to you, but you're really interfacing with some completely different timeline and some completely different reality. And the world is pliable. It's not locked down. Like rocks aren't rocks and water isn't water, but everything's fluid and changing constantly. And that's why when you're in these dreams, you freak out because all of a sudden, like, the physics of reality are gone. You're walking
snapped
through walls.
too into it, maybe.
Yeah. Well, there might be a war. Look, just the fact that this world exists in the state that it exists in. This world is very, very bizarre.
Right.
If it wasn't real. Like, if reality wasn't real, if we all lived in some sort of a black and white print version of life, and then you got to experience the life that you and I know, that's doing stand-up and being in LA and flying in planes and using the internet and experiencing life in the 21st century, in 2017, you would be like, this is the craziest psychedelic trip. If you went to Times Square,
Right.
and you had never experienced anything like human culture, and you went to Times Square, you would be freaking the fuck out.
Yeah, that'd be insane.
It would be insane. We're just so used to it. We're so used to it. We don't realize how bizarre the actual world is.
Well,
So
yeah, I mean,
it's possible that these dream worlds, that these are just different worlds that you tap into when you conk out. Could be you're running a series of lives. Like you have multiple lives going on. And your decisions you make in this conscious life affect all of them. And maybe you have other lives when you're asleep that are conscious when you're awake, but much like you're asleep and you don't remember what the fuck is going on, when they're asleep, they don't remember what the fuck is going on. And you interface, stand-up comedian, you might be an entity that interfaces with multiple different dimensions in the night. And you just don't remember it, just like you don't remember sleeping.
Right.
You don't remember dreaming. You don't remember a lot of shit that happens when you're conked out for 8 hours, right? Well, they probably don't remember when you're awake. And you're interfacing. You're not just shutting off. Like your brain wants to, everything needs to shut off so that your other self in this other dimension can interact. The mushroom growth that's in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
The mycelium growth that's literally the largest physical organism that's on Earth.
That counts as one organism?
Yeah. They think of it as one organism. And it's conscious. It has a consciousness. It's communicating with plants. I mean, you know, fungus breathes air. Yeah, it breathes air. And not only that, it might have come here from panspermia. It might have hitched a ride. Spores exist. They can exist in a vacuum of space. They can exist at insane temperatures. They could have come here, like psilocybin and all these like psychoactive compounds that, you know, Terence McKenna believed were responsible for the development of the human brain, the doubling of the human brain over a period of 2 million years. That's his stoned ape theory. That might have come from outer space. If you were observing the Earth from afar, if you had no context, if you didn't understand the human species at all, if you were completely alien from it, you were a being made of light, and you're observing what these creatures do. Well, what's the predominant change-oriented creature on this planet? It's humans. And what do humans do? Well, it seems like they make better and better stuff. That's what they're always doing. And maybe that's what materialism is all about. Maybe our obsession with materialism is an insurance policy that fuels constant innovation. You know, like I have a phone, an iPhone, one of my other phones, that's 3 years old, maybe. When I use it, I can't fucking tell. But when the new one comes out, I'm going to be one of the first dorks to get it. Why am I going to get it? Because I'm a fucking idiot. Because I want the newest, latest, greatest shit. And I want to fuel this innovation. Well, why is that? Well, what does it do? What are we doing? Well, we're eventually moving towards more and more capable things, more and more capable machines. We are the electronic caterpillar. We're giving birth to the butterfly, and we're making a cocoon, and we don't even know why. We're just fucking constantly trying to buy the newest. Oh, this one goes 0 to 16, 1.9 seconds. Whoa, gotta get it. You know, and we're constantly involved in this pursuit of technological innovation. Now, if you think of ideas, every single thing that exists on this planet, whether it's a mug or a house or a fucking windmill that creates electricity, all of those came out of the human imagination. All of them. You had an idea, a guy collaborates with this woman and she has an idea and her idea fits with your idea and it makes your idea better and more capable, and then you get together with a group of people, you form a startup, and your ideas all gel together and you're working 16 hours a day around the clock to make the world a better place with this new idea and this new product and this new innovation, and everything gets better over time. Nobody goes, you know what, these phones we got here right now, we're good, let's just stop innovating. Let's tell Samsung and Apple, let's just leave it the way it is, and we're good with phones. And let's channel this into cancer research. The human race wants to innovate. It seems like the whole universe wants constant states of complexity. Just from the time the Big Bang exists, to multicelled organisms, to conscious things that manipulate their environment like human beings. It's this constant state of ever-increasing complexity.